Hello, Michael Hay here again, and welcome to segment number 4. I think I'm going to change the pace up of these vlogs to justify doing them, because the last 3 were pretty much me prattling on about myself, and while that might have been interesting for an hour, I think it'll get boring really quickly, so I'm going to try and do something a little bit constructive here, and I'll tell you why in a second, because I'll go through the 2 questions that I was asked for this segment. The first question was, are all authors crazy? Yes. Yes, they are. Classmate asked me the second question, and that was, what advice could you offer for young writers, people just looking to start writing? It hit me that that is actually a really great idea. I'm not going to blog about the life of a big shot author because, quite frankly, I'm not. Future undetermined. I've got 1 book out, I've got the potential to write, and I'm stepping into a field that I have no idea what I'm doing, so what's the point on blogging on that? But I will blog about what I do know, at least I think I know, and that is kind of writing for yourself. I'm going to leave a record here for people that may just want to write for their own entertainment, and I can offer what tricks I know. So I drafted a list of my own questions that people may ask me, and this is going to be hopefully directed for kind of grade 12, 17, 18 years old, maybe a little bit younger, just how you go about writing and how you keep at it. So the first question I came up with is a fairly simple one, and it is, how can you think of stories? That's not something I can easily answer because to me it's what happens. A couple of random segments rattle around in my head like bingo balls, and then bam, I get a story. But how to put that process into an encouraging, process? I think you can approach writing in 2 different ways. They both have merit to them. The first way would be to approach it like a science. You can know all the strict rules there is about grammar and proper punctuation and all those elements of style, which I'm not going to get into. If you want that kind of advice, pick up a book or go to university for English 101 or something like that. Actually, I would encourage university courses for anybody because you can audit them, which is about half the price, and you don't get graded on it or anything. Basically, you're going for your own entertainment. So that might be a good way to learn those technical aspects to language. Actually, while I was at university, there was even a course, I believe it was called Technical English, which was a 2nd-year course. Anyway, long story short, it covered all that sort of stuff. So obviously I didn't do so well in it. And the other way to approach writing is as an art, and that's how I approach it. But for the sake of this, I think I can break it down a little bit. So, when I get a story idea, it's something that comes from the heart. I get a good, strong feeling that this is what I want to write about. And it wasn't always that way. I usually, as a child, would write about something that was readily at hand. So if I was watching too much TV with monsters in it, I would write about monsters. Or if I was reading a monster book, which I do remember one where somebody made like this angel out of different stuff to fight off the monsters in his closet or whatever. So I ended up writing a lot about monsters. So whatever influences you in your normal life is probably what you're going to write about. If you are really into math, you will probably write about math type people or a math type situation. I suggest you go with what you know. If you don't know and you decide you want to write about something, it never hurts to do a little bit of research. I will probably always write about strong individual characters, but that's how I perceive myself, as a strong opinion, little eccentric character. So that's ultimately what I'm going to write about. But I mean, it'll vary from book to book. Like in one novel that I have on the way, it's about a woman really who is not really remarkable. No supernatural powers. Well, I mean, she ends up meeting a werewolf, but that comes later. Actually, I'm not even sure if he's a werewolf, but I won't give too much away. The elements of that story just comes from wanting just a normal, peaceful life with no worries about money and that, which is her side of things, and that is based off me, somewhat, and werewolves, which I religiously watch werewolf movies. I still haven't found the best rendition of a werewolf, though I think the Harry Potter Professor Lupin, that werewolf, was probably the best looking film werewolf that I've seen, but I digress. So yes, you will ultimately write about what you know. If you are a high school student, I recommend you write about a high school student. I mean, just to start out, you can always branch out and do research later, but to start, just start writing about something you know. And I find the easiest way to practice writing is to write it every day. So naturally, I keep a journal. As I've alluded to in previous audio casts, that's where I developed a lot of my language. If I stack all my journals up, I've got probably a solid 8 inches of stacks of paper. So that's quite substantial for 8 years, I believe, just poring over the contents of your own mind. So yeah, rule number 1, keep a journal. And my second rule would be write by hand. I know this is a day and age where it's easier to sit down and type, but if Psychology 101 taught me anything, and I'm going back a few years here, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but they told me at the time that the process of actually writing and forming letters by hands has a deeper neurological process than the simple tapping of a key. So if you write something down as opposed to type it, you are something like 8 or 10 times more likely to remember it. And I always wrote by hand. Even in my university classes now, if I'm taking notes, I'm the one person that is taking notes on a clipboard and everybody else is using their Mac. It's the way I was brought up, and a lot of people don't have a familiarity with writing things down. It seems to get worse every day, but that would be my suggestion to you, is to write everything by hand. And there is a further practical purpose to that, as a pen and paper is pretty versatile. You can sit and write anywhere, and you don't need a power outlet, or you don't need a PC in front of you. I mean, laptops are fairly versatile, and you can get like $100 laptops easy. I've found a couple. Basically, what I consider those ones are electric typewriters, because for that price they can't do much else. But I have a Mac, and I can recognize the limits of that, because I don't always want to stare at a screen. It hurts the eyes after too many hours. Oh, but a tip, if you are going to sit and write at a computer, put on some sunglasses, because you can last a lot longer without eye strain. But yes, rule number 2 would be to write by hand, because you are far more likely to get that intimate connection with your text and remember it, and that will help you when trying to remember elements of your stories and thinking of where to go next. But if writing by hand absolutely doesn't work for you and you've tried it, don't be afraid to type. Don't think this is some sort of set of ultimate rules. And if writing and typing doesn't work for you, but you can narrate your stories like you could not believe, get a program that will record your voice as you speak. There are hundreds of them out there. I am using Audacity for these audio blogs, but I could just as easily use iMovie on the Mac here. I'm not sure what PC versions are, but they are certainly out there. So you could just narrate and then go back and type up what you spoke. And whatever way works for you ultimately is what you're going to choose to do. But I would just try writing by hand at first, simply for that psychological reason of remembering it. So following that would be rule number 3, is always keep a pad of paper and a pen handy. I mean, it can go in your pants pocket. It's not too hard to keep. I always clip a pen on the neck of my shirt so I can just reach up and grab it, and it's always right there. And I actually naturally just reach for my pen there now. As for a pad of paper, any old pad of paper will do. You can write on the back of napkins if you want, but have something handy. If you go to your local chapters, if you're in Canada, I don't know where you'd find this in the States, see if you can pick up a moleskin book. And what it is it's just this little black book, sometimes with lines, sometimes with blank pages, whatever you prefer. It's got a little elastic that goes around it, and it's not much bigger than a wallet. I was given one for Christmas a few years ago, and I find it's a really good aid. Because sometimes you get those ideas for a story while you're out, and you might think, oh, that'd be interesting to add to a story. But if you don't write that down, you're going to forget it, because those little moments are erased by your brain all the time. I mean, it happens to you, it happens to your mom, it happens to your teacher, it happens to everybody. That's just the way we're built as humans. So write it down. You can even get one of those little spiral bound notepads that are like 49 cents at a convenience store. Or, failing that, grab a couple of sheets of lined paper, fold them up and stick them in your wallet. Anything, just anything to write on, because you never know when you're going to get an idea. I've taken some short story ideas from dreams that I've had, and if I didn't have a pen and paper sitting beside me, I would have forgot it. And if you don't think those ideas are any good, remember that the basis of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein came from a dream that she had. So the more you write, the better you will get, and the more you write by hand, the better you remember what you actually do write, so you can use ideas and recycle them. Because you might cut a section out of something you're writing and say, no, this doesn't really fit, I don't like where this is going. But that doesn't mean it's a bad idea, it might just fit in a different story. I've recycled characters, settings, events more times than I can count, because nothing you write, I believe, is useless. It all has a place somewhere, even if in your lifetime you never get around to writing what you meant to write. Everything you wrote did have a part to play in one of your stories somewhere. So I'm going to say that rule number 4 is that nothing you write is a bad idea, which is not to be confused with everything that you write is appropriate, especially if you're in a school type setting. Just remember, keep it appropriate for whoever's reading it. Rule number 5 you might think is obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do it. And rule number 5 is to write. It's that simple. Write every day. Write every chance you get. It's like practice at anything else you do. The more you practice at track, the better you get at it. The more you study, the better you do on the test. The more you write, the better you will get at writing just by association. A lot of writers read a lot, and it's just practice and familiarization with language. For example, since September, so we've got September, October, November, December, January, I have read, while going to school mind you, Stephen King's The Stand, Lord of Souls by Greg Keyes, all 5 books that are currently written of the Game of Thrones series, Perks of Being a Wallflower, first 3 Harry Potter books on audio, which for the life of me I cannot get through when I'm reading. It's just something about it. And rule number 6, I kind of discussed it already when I went off on one of my tangents, is write about what you know, /C. Because if you don't know what to write about, always immediately look to your environment. Try it right now. Look up at the ceiling. What do you see? You're probably going to say something like ceiling tiles. You know, you might be outside, or you might be on the bus, or you might be in the car, or you might, who knows where you are, but I'm going to say ceiling tiles because that's what I see. And you might think that's simple, but there is a whole bunch of little details about those ceiling tiles that I could add. For example, one of them seems to be nailed up with a little tiny finishing nail, probably because the tenant before me hit it with something. Now, seeing that, I could write about what possibly the tenant was doing when he hit that ceiling tile. It looks like a pretty good bash, so who knows, he might have been practicing his sword forms. He might have been moving a couch. I mean, I got that just from looking at the ceiling. Then there is also the ceiling vent, and you might think about what is beyond that vent. I could see the apartment upstairs. I could see lost crayons in the air duct. I could imagine right now that there's a spider sitting up there and he's watching me, and maybe he wonders what I'm doing. Certainly not plotting his demise in any way, shape, or form. And then from there, you just have to let your imagination take you. And it might be hard, but the more you try, the better you will get. And that brings me to rule number 7. And rule number 7 is be healthy. You might think that's a little bit weird, but let me relate a story to you. Once upon a time, I was a very sickly university student. I didn't eat well, I didn't exercise, I didn't keep regular meals. One January, I decided I was going to go on a crusade to save my life. And I started eating 3 meals a day, stopped drinking caffeine for the most part, though I did have a tea every morning. And I started drinking water, and a lot of people don't like the taste of water, so try putting something like lemon in it. And I stayed away from as much sugar and salt as I could. Tried to stop drinking pop. I still indulge every once in a while. When I started, I couldn't do 10 push-ups in a row. By the time I was fit and on my way, I could do 30 push-ups at any given moment. I had energy, like I woke up in the morning and I was happy and I leapt out of bed. Bright seemed brighter and smells seemed stronger, and to be totally honest, even my eyesight started coming back. But more importantly, my mind started coming back, because you cannot think without any food, and you might not notice it. That's the problem. When you get down in the dumps, you don't actually realize how bad you feel. Try this right now. I imagine you are like everybody else. You maybe indulge in a little too much soda. You probably skip breakfast. Try a breakfast, even like a Nutri-Grain bar. That's good enough. Try some water with lemon in it. Try drinking it all day. You will notice a difference. And I can tell you right now, when I'm down in the dumps like that, I cannot write. I don't have the brain power to write. Your brain consumes something like 20% of everything that you eat, nutritional wise. So if you fill your body with sugars and salts and don't properly hydrate yourself, your memory is the first thing to go. So, as a brief recap, I will go through the rules. Rule number 1 is keep a journal. Rule number 2 is write by hand. 3 is keep a pad of paper and pen handy. 4 is nothing you write is a bad idea. Remember that for some audiences, not everything you write may be appropriate. Number 5 is to write. 6 is write about what you know and what you see. 7 is be healthy, because your body is a machine. If the machine doesn't have the proper fuel or isn't working properly, it can't do what it's meant to do, and in your case, you're trying to make it right. And tip of the day is wear sunglasses while you're at your computer for length of time. That's what I do. It helps me. I can't guarantee it will help you. I'm not even sure if it's particularly healthy for you to do that, but that's what I do, and I think it works. So take that advice as you may. To all you potential writers out there, spill some ink and let me know what happens. This is Michael Hay, and I'm done. Goodbye.